Just because you have bad credit either in your business or your personal credit doesn't mean you're not going to get lending. Bad credit doesn't disqualify you from this, and it shouldn't steer people away from following their dreams.
Can you explain the relationship between personal credit and business financing opportunities?
Personal credit can come into play with business lending opportunities because a lot of small businesses, when they start up, don't necessarily have the credit that they might need to get a loan or secure a type of loan. So the lender will then look at their personal credit and hold them responsible personally to get their business started. Once the business is established and running and it starts to create and generate its own credit, then the personal component can be taken out. But initially, they're seen a little bit in tandem.
Is that a big challenge for a lot of business owners, would you say?
It depends on your credit score and your credit report, I should say. So there's a difference between a credit score and a credit report. A credit report gives more detail to the lender, and in that detail will really tell the lender how risky the individual is to give them the loan for anything, whether it's business or personal. From there, they determine on whether or not the loan is going to be approved or not, depending on how risky they are. Just because your credit score is bad doesn't mean you won't get financing opportunities. The only caveat to that is that the rate might be a higher rate because you are looked at as being more risky.
How important is having good personal credit for business lending purposes?
I would say personal credit is very important for business lending purposes if you're a new business, because that's the only credit that the lender is going to look at until the business has its own credit history. So it's very important in the early days. If you're a bigger corporation and you have more startup money involved, it might not be as important. But if you're a small business, which is what we deal with here at CSI, it's very important to have strong credit on your personal side to get the most advantageous lending opportunities.
What impact does a high personal credit score have?
If you have a high personal credit score or report, you have very good personal credit, and you bring that into a new business, that's great. That gives you competitive rates in the market when you're looking for lending opportunities. If you need a car loan, chances are you can find one relatively easily without having to chase a lot of banks. Similarly with opening a line of credit for a business to get it started or to get some built-up capital going in the early days, having a strong credit report will allow you to do that versus having bad credit would make that difficult. Do you have leverage with that? I don't necessarily think so. I think a lot of the lending market is controlled by whatever the feds are doing with the interest rate and how accessible money is in the given financial world. The availability and the riskiness kind of varies depending on the availability. If the availability of funds from the feds is very good, then, you being maybe a risky candidate without a great credit score won't be considered as much versus tough lending times and high interest rates when banks aren't as eager to lend.
What impact does a low personal credit score have?
A person with a lower personal credit score or report is going to have a harder time finding competitive rates in the market, regardless of whether or not the funding is accessible. The rate is really going to go up versus somebody that has a strong credit report. So, for example, if you use 7% as a baseline for the current interest rate, if you are looked at as risky and have a bad credit score, that 7% might turn into 8%, even 9% pretty quickly, because you're looked at as more risky. the bank is going to charge more to you because you appear to be more risky to them.
Is having no credit a bad thing for business financing opportunities?
That's a great point, actually, because the reason that small business owners need to leverage their personal credit is because the business itself doesn't have any credit. Having no credit is bad when you go to look for lending. So if you also don't have any credit on your personal side, boy, I don't know where they would keep digging for. I mean, maybe you could find a cosigner for the loan, but that then brings a third party into the situation, which might not be necessarily ideal. But a great point nonetheless, because that's really the essence of what we're talking about here. The business is what needs a loan, financing of some sort. Well, they have no credit. So the backdrop is the personal credit that it goes to next. Well, if there's nothing there as well, I mean, kind of dried up the well a little bit, unless you can keep going down the rabbit hole and trying to find signers of sorts.
How can individuals improve business credit?
Pay their bills. Yeah, we stress it a lot here. You got to pay your bills, just really in general, both on the personal side and the business. A lot of people kind of have this conception that, well, I pay all my bills through the business. Oh, okay. And then they go to the lender and start asking for another loan for whatever they might need. And that credit in the business isn't built up enough. And they backdrop to the personal credit, and it looks really bad over here on the personal side. Sure, they can be great at paying their bills over here, but if you're not great at paying your bills on both sides of things, especially early on for small businesses, that's going to look risky. Pay your bills. That's the best way to get your credit score up. You know, the less expenses that you have on your business, the better profitability you have, the better overall performance of the business you have. So if you can lower the interest that you're paying on any given loan because of your good personal credit score, you're running a more profitable business.
What are common mistakes regarding personal and business finances?
I would say the biggest mistake that I see in regards to personal finances and business finances in general is going for the payday loans can be a very slippery slope. Once you start going down that path, your debt grows to be so big that it can be so hard to dig yourself out of. So if you're in trouble, try to stay away from those places. Yes, they will lend to anybody, but that's not always a good. Yeah, so a payday loan is essentially a short-term loan, very high interest to get you by until you get your paycheck is kind of the idea behind the principle. They're short-term, they're very high interest, and they're everywhere. Again, the idea is that you pay it back once you get your paycheck. A lot of the times for small businesses, that's not how it operates. They're waiting on a big job potentially to hit, and then they plan on paying it back. But you get 2, 3, 4 of these payday loans built up. The interest component to that at the end of it could be worth just as much as what the principal amount was, if not more. Most of the time, more. I have seen before that people have built up these payday loans, and it's gotten to the point where it's actually forced them to close their business because the interest component is so high that it drowns them financially.
What tips do you have for paying off debt and improving credit?
I would say the biggest advice I can give you is if you have a loan payment, let's use an example of $100, and every month you just pay that minimum loan payment of $100. If you can dump that to $120 every month, that's huge. You're going to pay off that loan so much quicker because the way an amortization schedule works is on the front end, you're paying so much interest that if you can dip into that principal, even by $20 every payment, you're gonna eat up the life of that loan, and by the end of it, you're gonna pay it off early and pay less interest in the long run as well. So I would say even if it's $5, if you can do $5 more on any specific loan, do it.
Are there any myths about personal credit or business financing?
Just because you have bad credit either in your business or your personal credit doesn't mean you're not going to get lending. Bad credit doesn't disqualify you from this, and it shouldn't steer people away from following their dreams. So is it a myth? No, but is it encouraging words for somebody that's looking to start their own business? Yes. Just because you have bad credit doesn't mean that you can't do this. Still do it. Go do your dreams.
What's the best way to build business credit?
If you want the business to start building up its own credit and having that available to the business, keep the spending separate. Legally, you're supposed to anyway, but specifically towards the credit side of things, build it up in the business as a separate entity and leave your personal side out of it. As soon as you can draw the line between the two in a more defined way, you're more protected from a liability standpoint. There's different entity structures within the way a small business is established initially. If it's a corporation or an LLC electing to be a corporation, those rules very much separate the person from the business. Lending-wise, they might cross that line, but in the example of a sole proprietorship, no matter what, your personal financing is on the line just as much as your business financing is on the line. They run very much in parallel in a sole proprietorship. So if that is your business, then the point is kind of moot because your business is your personal credit.